We like to kick off these Wednesday episodes by talking about a defiance win. And there was a big win this week for the defiance in this country, and it has to do with the judge ruling that the Trump administration illegally sent National Guard troops into Los Angeles and ruling that they need to be sent home.
A federal judge has once again put a stop to the Trump administration's plans to use National Guard troops for law enforcement operations. CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen reading the order. Tom, what do you know?
Hey there, Reed. Well, this is the second time this judge, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer, has gone toe-to-toe with the Trump administration when it comes to the use of the National Guard, specifically in Los Angeles. And he boils it down to Title 10. And I want to pull that up for us so we can give an explanation about what exactly Title 10 is when it pertains to National Guard and federal service. So basically, the criteria here, whenever the United States or any of the Commonwealths or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States to be used. Justice Breyer saying that is not the case. I want to read you a little bit of his ruling here. The founders designed our government to be a system of checks and balances. Defendants, however, make clear that the only check they want is a blank one.
I want to bring our panel into the conversation here. I will introduce again Ruth Ben-Ghiat, best-selling author, who I noted is a thorn in the side of autocrats. Ruth, it's so great to have you here, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And then we're going to bring Brett Meiselas into the conversation, the incredible co-host of the Midas Touch podcast. Brett, welcome.
It's great to be here on the Oprah episode. I love it. You get a democracy. You get a democracy. You get a. I wish right. That was what was going on right now.
I'm sure I'll get the copyright infringement lawsuit somewhere in the mail at some point, if they can find me, and then we get to bring also into the conversation the indefatigable Molly Jong-Fast. Molly, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, my friend. We may have another friend popping in here in a few minutes. Our producer will send me the flag if we have that person jumping in, but I want to dive into this with you guys. And Ruth, I'm going to start with you. I want to get your reaction to that news about the National Guard deployment. This is a pretty big deal because in June, I remember the time of day that Guard deployment was launched. I think you were on TV the same day as me talking about that. And initially folks were like, well, maybe it's not that bad. But, folks like you and I and a handful of others that day were saying, this is the big one. The president is sending troops into American cities. You have to understand it's not going to start with Los Angeles. And now it's fitting that first deployment is now being undone by the courts. What's your reaction to it?
Yeah, that's a really big deal because Los Angeles was the test case. And I was doing a lot of media. I also wrote a New York Times op-ed saying that, really what the Trump administration couldn't stand was the sight of people coming out into the streets to help the vulnerable. And so they flooded the zone with National Guard and, very important, a Marines battalion that had served in Afghanistan and Iraq in the war on terror. And so to me, who looks at military coups and people like Pinochet who used troops on domestic populations, this was sending troops in, was telling us you were going to be the enemy from now on. And so LA was the test case. So having this undone juridically now is really significant.
Brett, I want to get your reaction to this as well, because our theme this week on this Wednesday mission briefing for defiance.org is going on legal offense and not being in this defensive crouch against the Trump administration. And this case was brought in part by folks going on legal offense and suing the Trump administration over this deployment. You all have been highlighting this fact as well, that there seems to be a growing defiance among the American people in this moment. Is it your sense that the tide is turning here? I mean, to me, I saw the story today and I felt like, yeah, another piece of good news. What's your take on that?
I think the tide is definitely turning, and I think it's important that us as citizens reflect on what's going on and also take notes of the various wins that we're seeing. I mean, there's a lot of bad to focus on, but there's also a lot of signs of hope. And I think we've seen that the American people are totally done with this regime at this point. We've seen what's been happening at these various elections over the past few weeks. We've seen what happened last night in Miami and in Georgia. I mean, they tried to gerrymander the crap out of that seat, but the Democrats still flipped a Trump plus 12 district, a district that Trump won by 12 in just 2024. That's not that long ago. And so I think Trump came in, he pretended that he had this incredible mandate to do whatever the hell he wanted. He didn't really understand what voters were telling him, which is that they were upset that prices were high. Then the key part of his policy was to raise prices further by implementing tariffs on everything and starting these ridiculous trade wars. And then he's done all this incredibly unpopular and, in my opinion, unconstitutional stuff, like sending troops on the streets in various cities. And I think that's also exposed his con game, because it's one thing to be able to lie to the American people when you're not in power or when people aren't cognizant of what is actually happening in the country in various parts of the country. But with these troop deployments, if you tell somebody that there's chaos in the streets of LA and you're sending the military to quell the chaos, and people look outside their, I'm in Los Angeles, people look outside their windows and they go, there's nothing wrong. Nothing's going on here. What are you doing? And then you do that in Portland and people are like, I just had a lovely day at the farmer's market here in Portland. What the hell are you doing? And then you do it in DC. I think people quickly catch up to your BS and they realize that it's all for show, that you're just trying to show the strength. But in that strength, what we're actually seeing right there is weakness.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, in the spirit, Brett, of the tide turning and people pushing back, Molly, I don't want to go too far forward into the future, but you in the past few days have started talking about something that I think sets a very important marker out there. And you should tell us about Project 2029, because the day that I saw this, I was sitting around thinking, one of our groups or orgs or a group of folks need to launch something called the undo list, where we literally just list out all the things that need to be undone on day one. And then I saw you were doing this and I thought, okay, well, Molly's off to the races. Tell us about Project 2029 and why this in and of itself is an act of defiance.
So look, there is, again, I think it's important to go backwards before we go forwards on this, which is Project 2025 was a Heritage Foundation's mandate for leadership. The idea here is that you have a kind of wish list that you want. And again, I think it was pretty smart of them, because remember, Trump struggles with focus. And so they had a sort of plan.
You don't say.
Wanted, and they got a lot of it, because Trumpism is, and I don't need to tell you this, largely not ideological, right? It's kleptocracy. It's sort of throwing things in the wall and see what sticks. So the idea here is like, how do you prevent what happened last time? How do you not have a one-term Democratic president who just serves as a placeholder? How do you do something to undo the corruption that's happened during Trumpism and to make sure it doesn't happen again? And we're talking about broad, sweeping, anti-corruption legislation a la Richard Nixon, and that, a la post-Richard Nixon legislation. And that's what we need to see, is we need to see whoever gets in there next, the Democratic president, the Democratic Congress, the Democratic Senate, they need to be laser focused on passing laws that stop corruption. And by the way, that starts with ending congressional stock trading. That starts, like, anti-corruption legislation can start in Congress. And we must demand, not in a nonpartisan way, that our electeds hold themselves to a moral standard that is the only way we get out of Trumpism.